Hey, deserving listeners, 90 Day Fiancé. Let's watch.
Looks
yeah,
nice.
and it's just
Bunk beds. My bunk beds.
people can quiere quedarse like friends or like that.
Sure. Guest bedroom.
Okay, it'll be interesting to see what Mahogany says about this. There's a lot of speculation, including for me, that this is not her actual place, perhaps an Airbnb, maybe a friend's place, who knows. Ben was even saying that, and maybe we'll get an answer to that. I think another possibility is, or a lot of people are speculating as to why she would do this. One is that she's terrified of Ben and doesn't want Ben to know where she lives. Okay. Another possibility is that she didn't want cameras to be in her family home, and she might have even told the producers, this is where I live. You know, she could have actually been tricking the producers, even though the producers might have known she was lying. Anyway, this could literally be her place, and she just happens to have bunk beds that are, you know, made up for children. Maybe she has a thing about that. The other possibility is that she was ashamed of her house. The other possibility is she was trying to keep her parents out of it. The other possibility is the parents said, we don't, you know, there's just a lot of unknowns as to why this would happen, but maybe we'll find out.
This is my bedroom.
Where do your parents sleep?
My parents don't sleep here.
Oh, okay. In our texting, she definitely told me that she lived with her parents. And that was only like a month ago. Mahogany's not telling me the truth about her living situation, so I'm just trying to figure out what else has she not told me.
Yeah, there's a tremendous amount of shadiness from Mahogany, and if I were Ben's friend, I would say the indications are piling up that you should just go home. So, just go home.
Mahogany también es madura.
Sí, es bastante madura. A pesar de la edad que ella tiene, 22 años.
I thought you were 24. So trust works both ways.
You don't trust me?
So it'll be interesting to see what Mahogany says about these apparent lies as well. In the past, she, when pushed into a corner about these lies, literally just wanders off. So on the show, there's an opportunity for that, but it'll look more obvious. But I'm curious as to what happened. To me, this whole thing, I just feel like it was a mistake from the beginning, that he fell in love with someone that either was mildly into him or not into him at all. And the whole thing should have been scrapped from the beginning by Ben and Mahogany, that she should have said, I'm not going to meet up with him. I'm sorry, I don't want to be with you. Or I'm sorry I catfished you, or I can't be with you, go away. And he just should have turned around and gone home. And the whole season of us watching them together, I think, was frustrating to me because of that reason, that it just should not have progressed, at least in terms of the way we're seeing it.
That was not nice.
Mahogany, if you weren't going to meet him, why didn't you just text him to tell him that?
Así fue. Yo le dejé un texto a él. Antes, yo lo llamé, pero él decidió venir y me dijo, voy a buscarte.
But how long did it take you to actually get in touch with her?
Wait, that needs to be investigated. I hope they go dive into that, because that's actually if I'm understanding right, a pretty significant detail. She's saying, I told him not, I mean, we knew that she had told him not to come, but from the edit, it was, she was worried about her parents disapproving, and Ben went anyway, which is suspect to begin with. But now we're hearing from her, which we don't know, because she seems capable of lying. We don't know. She claims that she doesn't remember saying she was 24 when anyway, so, but that sounded believable, that she repeatedly told him not to come, and he came anyway. He says, I'm going to find you. I think at the beginning of the season, I would have been like, huh? But after seeing that scene at the car and hearing him earlier talk about gazelles and lions, and I think, I don't know if I've said this, but there is a certain, I think I did say this, that in cults or in certain religious groups, there is a strong notion of paternalism and misogyny and control and dominance over women. And he could have come from a indoctrination like that. He might have extracted himself to some extent from that mindset, but he might still have massive residual belief systems around it, particularly if you're raised from 0 to 20 in that mindset. It's really hard to get out of that. So, but that statement of, I'm going to find you anyway, I think what he would say is, well, I thought she was in love with me, and I thought I was showing that I loved her and that I wasn't going to let anything get in the way, including her parents' disapproval, because I'm so romantic. I think that's what he would say. But you would also hope that he would put the brakes on and say, well, how do we deal with this? And of course, this plays into the narrative that he's some sort of predator. And maybe he is, but I've treated predators, and of course I've treated victims of predators, and the things that we've seen on the show is not indicative of predation. The one time when I thought, what's happening, it was when they kissed. It did not look at first as though she consented to that. And of course, there was no indications that she wanted to do that. But then she, immediately responded physically. We don't know, because some people will respond physically even when they're being coerced as a survival mechanism. And then afterwards, she said she thought he was a good kisser. So I guess we still don't know. Actually, when I think about it, there's a chance that Mahogany did not want to kiss him. And I mean, all things were pointing that direction. So I guess I'll rethink that, or reconceptualize that that's still on the table. Given everything that we've seen, maybe the accusations are right, that it's in a grooming predation direction. But I will say that on this show, a lot of the comments, or some of the comments that I see, there's a very quick accusation of grooming and predatorship, when I find, like, now for some people, one, they might be detecting something because they've been predated upon and they are seeing subtle signs that remind them of their abuser that I either might not pick up, or two, might not regard as strong enough of a signal. I'm usually looking for concrete evidence before I would especially say something like that. The other thing that could be happening is that if you were predated upon and someone is exhibiting similar behavior, even though they're not predating and being a predator and abusing someone, it looks like that, and so you become convinced that it is that. And of course, that's an indication, it's a barometer that you deserve healing from what is happening to you.
I think it was about a day and a half, maybe 2 days.
What? Okay. And once you arrived, it was almost 2 days before she even responded.
On the surface, that looks pretty bad, but I think what he would say is, you understand, over texting, I had so much indication that she was in love with me and that our love was special and that we were going to spend the rest of our lives together. Now, everyone else would say, why would you believe that about such, the sort of communications you were getting? It seems like you were being catfished. It still kind of seems that way. But his naivete and foolishness doesn't necessarily help in that situation. So I think that's what he would say, is like, yeah, I went down there. I thought we were in love. Because according to him, the only thing she heard from him as to what would be a barrier was the parents' disapproval. And I think he thought that he would be able to win them over. So I don't think it's illogical for him to have landed and to have stayed there hoping that he might be able to meet Mahogany and maybe even meet the parents to ease their fears.
Oh my gosh. Kim, could you imagine if you had gone to meet Usman and she did not contact you for 2 days?
No. Are you crazy? What are you thinking over there?
I would have probably just went back home.
I would have too.
Well, if I really love...
Well, now, Mike, maybe, but Mike was in a similar situation when he went down the second time to Colombia, and Jimena was, really blowing him off in some pretty overt ways. So the fact that Mike would say, I would have gone home, I don't know if that's true, Mike. So, yeah.
Loved her, I'd buy stay and try to get a hold of her.
Yes.
Right. So Gino, I think, is exhibiting what I would. I think so. For you therapists out there, and maybe for you non-therapists out there, it's easy to watch the show, and especially the way that they try to edit it, to be convinced of a certain storyline. And I think, at least the way it comes across, it's easy to look at Ben as some sort of predator, right? Some sort of forceful person. But you have to really enter their experience. And of course, predators have a particular way of framing things. But for Ben, like I said before, text, love, kids, rest of our lives together, you can call him a fool, but and the fact that to some extent you could consider him, in terms of dating experience, that of a 16-year-old, because I'm under the impression that he was in the cult or the religious, coercive, isolated religious group, marries his wife, and then fast forward to now, he's never had the experience of maybe even being in love. So when he lands in Peru and she's not there, if you're in that state, it would make sense. Of course, you wouldn't give up. You'd say, "This is my love. We are going to spend the rest of our lives together. I'm not going to give up. I'm confused. Why am I not getting a text?" But I'm just guessing there's a logical explanation to this, that but she loves me. She loves me. She loves me. Look at these texts. She loves me. She loves me. So Gino, I think, sees that.
Let's talk about the miscommunication about how old Mahogany really is. Mahogany, did you tell Benjamin that you were older than you actually were?
Sí, yo dije que era un año mayor. Me subí un año más.
She's admitting to lying to 1 year. It was 2. So why would she lie? Why would she admit but lie while admitting? Why not admit to the full 2 years? And then there's that smile again. And we've been hypothesizing as to what that smile is. It's a smile, right? What is it? Is it smug? Is it nervousness? Someone actually commented below saying that they were like Mahogany when they were younger, and they had relational traumas that resulted in them having a compulsion to get men to fall in love with them. And I've actually had a number of people contact me, and I've had clients like this too, where they're so insecure and so immature and so lost, and they're looking for a fast track to self-esteem and to self-worth, and they discover at some point that they can attract people, and so they will do everything they can to attract people without ever asking themselves if they actually want to be with that person. All they want is the attraction. They want the indication that very temporarily gives them a jolt of self-esteem that doesn't last, of course. And the person commenting below was, when they were caught on the lies, the commenter below, she was saying, when the men would catch me on the lies, I, in my very suffering and immature state, thought consciously that I had the upper hand. And so I would lie back thinking, haha, I've got you now in the palm of my hands, and I'm going to be able to trick you into believing you're the one at fault. And so we don't know if that's what we're seeing here, but if it was, it could be like, okay, I lied, but I only lied about 1 year. He's the crazy one. That kind of thing. Again, we can't know. Mahogany is a humongous mystery because there's just such a lack of anything ever since the whole season. I have no idea. There are some people on the show where, like with Ben, for example, I feel like I have a sense of who he is. With Mahogany, I have zero sense. And that's fine. She doesn't have to present herself in a way that makes sense to me. But I don't have anything to stand on when it comes to conceptualizing what's going on with Mahogany. What do you think is behind that smile?
Okay, why one? Why 1 year? You know?
No lo sé, no lo sé. Yo creo que debemos no siempre dar toda la información a personas que...
Okay, I mean, what? Yeah, a great question by Sean. Why lie about 1 year? 2, you didn't lie about 1 year. It was 2 years. Why lie about 2 years? And she says, I don't know. Because you shouldn't give out your information to people you meet online. What difference does it make that you claim that you're 21 as opposed to 23? Okay, but the bigger issue here is, so Ben was just someone you met online? All right, maybe in the beginning, but eventually, when you're professing love and you want to have kids with him, you would, I would assume, come clean and say, by the way, I was lying about my age. Maybe we'll get an answer to that.
Conocemos en línea, no si eres tan menor de edad.
It was actually 2 years.
So if you had known her real age, would you still have pursued the relationship?
I don't know.
Yeah, I've been saying this from the beginning. Like, on the surface, mathematically, it shouldn't make that much of a difference. 21 versus 23, grown woman of age in most jurisdictions, if not all. What's the difference? But there is a difference, at least to me, not as a therapist, but as a citizen. There is a difference there. And so I think it's true that for Ben, those years did make a difference, especially now that he's experienced her. I think if they were totally in love, I think he would say in this moment, no, I don't mind because we have a connection and she loves me.
I don't know.
But it was only a 2-year difference, right?
It's kind
Yes,
of
it's not that much.
Yeah.
So would that really make a difference?
I mean, no, it's 2 years.
I think I know what's going through, I don't know, but I think I know what's going through Ben's mind, which is, I think, similar to what's going through mine, which is that, yeah, on paper, it's just 2 years difference. What's the biggie? But it does make a difference. It just sounds so weird, though, that, yeah, I'll date a 23-year-old, but I won't date a 21-year-old. You're like, well, what? But I don't know. I kind of understand. And I guess it raises this larger question that we talk about in my field, but in society we don't typically talk about, because we have these definitions like you're 18, you're an adult, that there's a progression, and it's different for different people from childhood to adulthood. And age is correlated with that, but it's not a strong indication of where you are at developmentally and maturity-wise. And so there is a difference between 21 and 23. It's not universal, and certainly there can be some 21-year-olds who are more mature than 25-year-olds and vice versa. But there are, there's a fair amount of, in the same way that there's a fair amount of, well, I guess one way to think about it is like, we all know there's a difference between 10 and 15 in terms of maturity on average. So if you say, well, and by definition, on average, there's a difference between 14 and 15, right? On average. We would also say there's a difference between 21 and 23 on average. But the differences become more spread out, right? There's a huge difference between 6 months and 9 months, for example. But there's not a huge difference between 15 and 15 and a half, right? There's a much bigger difference between six months and 12 months as opposed to 15, so the differences get elongated, right? So as an analogy, just, this is a scientific statement, the difference of maturity on average between 21 and 23 might be analogous to the difference between maturity between, say, 15 and 14. Does that make sense? So anyway, I'm really curious as to what Mahogany will say to all this. But I'm guessing we're just going to get more of that smile. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.